Okay, so let's talk a bit about Terence Fisher. And yes, we're doing Hammer films for a while. And we'll begin in the 50s, prior to a few seminal genre films they released literally the year or two after this film, released in 1954. We're generally in the business of standard thrillers. Thrillers may count as genre films, but no science fiction or supernatural elements featured in many Hammer films until their Quatermass theatrical film adaptations and X the Unknown, which we'll discuss somewhat shortly in the future. Though actually, Terence Fisher here, Hammer's best director, and certainly its most celebrated consistent filmmaker by far, had directed two sci-fi features in 1953, Spaceways and Four-Sided Triangle. I've discussed both films on this channel before, but I'll just briefly say of them that Spaceways is a standard murder mystery, but they gave a very mild sci-fi, preparing for space travel theme in order to market it as more novelty work and to give this standard story a little spice. And Four-Sided Triangle is a pretty compelling movie about a cloned human, a little like the old story Alaroon, which has been adapted into film a couple of times, including the year prior to Four-Sided Triangle, a West German film starring Erich von Stroheim, which is very good in my opinion. And 2022's Poor Things bears some similarities to the text also, although that was based off of another novel entirely, if I remember right. And also it is quite Four-Sided Triangle appealing as a vision of England in the 50s prior to the 60s and the cultural upheaval of the old institutions and unshaking nature of the notion of England and of a permanent cultural continuity, for better or for worse, and is totally distinct as an item. It is almost pre-war in its disposition, with the space age pathos imbued within it, making it a highly unique techno-aesthetic item. Spaceways and Four-Sided Triangle were the first two quite interesting films to be directed by Terence Fisher, as far as I am aware at least, and then in 1954 he put out a duo of relatively interesting crime noir pieces. First we'll look at this one, The Unholy Four, also known as The Stranger Came Home. Actually, to go over Terence Fisher's career just a little further, he would helm the significant works which marked Hammer for posterity as an institution of the horror genre on screen. These included The Curse of Frankenstein, The Revenge of Frankenstein, Horror of Dracula, The Man Who Could Cheat Death, The Mummy, and a completely excellent rendition of The Holmes Tale, The Hound of the Baskervilles, released in 1959. At the end of the 1950s, Fisher was responsible for a set of films which defined Hammer's cinematic output going forward and how the people would be perceiving it for the rest of time. In the 60s, Fisher directed works, some of them not for Hammer, including Sword of Sherwood Forest, The Stranglers of Bombay, The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll, Brides of Dracula, Curse of the Werewolf, Sherlock Holmes and the Deadly Necklace, The Phantom of the Opera, The Horror of It All, The Earth Dies Screaming, The Gorgon, Island of Terror, Dracula Prince of Darkness, Night of the Big Heat, Frankenstein Created Woman, The Devil Rides Out, and Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed. In the 70s, he directed the last film of the Hammer Frankenstein cycle, Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell, and quite a good one it is, I feel as though. Terence Fisher was certainly a superb film director, and it is very heavily demonstrated in the work I'm displaying now, excellently executed for the most part for the modest project, which it is. It makes you wonder how the world might be different had England been the dominant filmmaking country in the English-speaking world, or just world rather than America, and how potentially more, say, classy, refined, and even earthy and gritty, or is this just England's pathos after the Second World War, but maybe just post the First World War? Not sure. Someone else could answer this maybe a bit more sufficiently. It is interesting to think about, but a British noir holds more inherent interest to me on paper than an American one, even if the British didn't quite deliver or near as many classics as the Americans. And one gets the feeling that maybe they could have, and really for our contemporary viewing sake, damn should have. It is a fun watch, reasonably impressive as an act of filmic realization of events, not the greatest script in terms of any plausibility, from Michael Carreras, who is best known as a major producer at Hammer, and a director sometimes, a bit later in their run. Although it is reasonably likable as a set of dialogue and character interactions, it was based off of a novel titled Stranger at Home. Stranger at Home by George Sanders. Yes, that George Sanders, the famous actor, the voice actor of Shere Khan in Disney's classic Jungle Book movie, actually was ghostwritten by the famous writer Lee Brackett, screenwriter of The Big Sleep, Rio Bravo, yuck. That's my stance, fucking sue me, really. The subsequent Hawks films, Atari, El Dorado, and Rio Lobo, Altman's Long Goodbye, and an early highly significant draft of what became Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. and published under the famous actor Sanders' name. This novel was as a means of publicity when the book was published first in 1946. Fisher's skill as a director here is evident, as I hope I have displayed via the screen caps throughout. Thank you all. I hope you have an excellent day, night, wherever you are, whatever it might